Welcome to the Ride With Us podcast, presented by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, the world's largest ride enthusiast organization dedicated to the appreciation, promotion, and preservation of roller coasters around the globe. So please keep your hands and feet inside the podcast at all times as we welcome in your host.
Hello, enthusiasts. It's your host, Jessica Gardner. This week, it's Father's Day. And here on the podcast, we're celebrating families. We at ACE know that our love and enjoyment of coasters and parks can form great bonds, make friendships, and bring people with similar enthusiasm together. And isn't it great when families can share that appreciation too? Well, our correspondent, John Davidson, sat down with fellow coaster dad and ACE member Robert Moran to bring us some fatherly advice. Enjoy!
Hello and welcome to the ACE Ride With Us podcast, where today we're kind of taking a family turn and we want to talk about building relationships in our family revolving around roller coasters. And I am lucky to have ACE member from Mid-Atlantic, Robert Moran. Robert, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I think we all, I don't know if I'd say bonds, but I would say ACE has a lot of fellowship around events, around meeting other people. And for this one, I think it would be really good because I heard you had an amazing story about how you bonded with your high school daughter. And I thought maybe you would like to tell us a little bit about. But first, let's start with, what do you consider your home park?
Well, I'm going to go back to Kings Island, just outside of Cincinnati, because I grew up in Southern Ohio. And even though I live and work in the nation's capital now, it will always be my home park and always have those, formative sort of teenage memories. It's a wonderful park and is to this day.
It is a beautiful park. We just had spring conference. We had 3 full days at Kings Island and it was amazing. Do you know what my highlight was for that trip? Can you guess?
Oh, it has to be the Beast, riding the Beast.
So we did the Beast at night and it's just amazing. We had a walk back on Beast, tons of other things. But yes, that is a amazing park. So when did you get your family excited about theme parks and roller coasters?
The story really begins with my daughter, Ruth, who got our family interested and excited in it. She's always been our daredevil. She does trick quad skating and was really interested in theme park design and also coaster design, and started just studying it online. And then started going to King's Dominion, which is north of Richmond and not too far from us, and really got me interested in it. And so what happened is in 2021, I drove across the country back and forth, DC to LA, back with my son. And then Ruth and I talked about what we would do for our big father-daughter road trip. And so her idea was a big American coaster tour. And that's exactly what we did in 2022.
So this is great. So she actually pulled you into the coasters. Nice. Yes. I had the exact opposite with my dad. My dad took us to Six Flags Mid-America, now Six Flags St. Louis, all through growing up. I remember every year we at least did one trip. So he's the one that kind of got me and my family involved. So tell me, how did she start to plan that trip? And then how did you get hooked into, how many stops did you do?
Well, it was a joint process, and she had a number of parks she wanted to see. She wanted to see Knott's Berry Farm. She wanted to see Six Flags Magic Mountain because they have all these sort of huge coasters. And then we obviously had to hit Kings Island and Cedar Point. And so then we started planning from there. What we did was we flew to LA from DC. We flew to LA. We had shipped our Jeep out to LA. We picked the Jeep up and then we drove back across the country. We hit a ton of theme parks and coasters along the way. My daughter has a very detailed list. She keeps this Excel file of all the coasters that she's ridden and her notes and how many times. So she's got this sort of perfect doomsday list of the whole thing.
That is amazing. So let me hear this. You shipped your Jeep all the way across the country. That's it's a big undertaking.
Well, the idea was, she had turned 16, had her driver's license, and we wanted to also use it as a way to get her a ton of road hours. And what better way to do it than with your dad driving across the country? As you know, a huge amount of America is lonesome roads. So those are great ways to get a lot of road hours for a young person. So that's what we did. And we landed, we immediately hit the coasters on Santa Monica Pier, which I love and which is a ton of fun. And then we did Disney and then Knott's Berry Farm. And Knott's Berry Farm was one of the theme parks we really fell in love with, I have to say. It was a wonderful day.
So why did you say it was what you fell in love with? Why
my daughter and I, over the course of our trip, we developed this kind of overarching theory about theme parks, which is they have to have great coasters, okay? But the park has to have great theming, and it also has to have some kind of connection to the local community to really make it work. And so we loved Knott's Berry Farm because it grew organically. We love Knott's Berry Farm, by the way, and Silver Dollar City for many of the same reasons. They grew organically. They started out like as something else, as sort of attractions, and then developed into amusement parks. But we loved the boysenberry pie. We loved the old timey sort of Wild West theming of Knott's Berry Farm. And it was well themed and had really good food, not just like fair food, but actually good food. So the entire experience at Knott's Berry Farm was tremendous. And we decided that we really liked those parks that sort of have a long history that evolved. And, the same is true of Silver Dollar City, which we absolutely loved and highly recommend as well.
All right. So give me a little more on the logistical side. Are you leaving the park, driving halfway to the next park and just finding a hotel and then continuing on? Or is this just like, I'm just trying to picture in my head for the listeners, how you get all the way across the US.
It was a fine-tuned machine. So the listener should know that the year prior, I did something like this with my son, where we went to baseball games almost every night. So what you do is you drive during the day, get to the park, watch the game, go to your hotel, sleep, get up, drive to the next park, go. We did the same basic strategy with theme parks, and it worked out really well, going west to east. So we spent a bunch of days in Southern California just because there's so many theme parks. Then we drove to Vegas and went to Adventure Dome, which was a total blast. And then we drove to Salt Lake, but couldn't quite make it to Lagoon Park that day. And then to Denver, Elitch Gardens, and then to Kansas City, Worlds of Fun, and then to Branson, Missouri, Silver Dollar City, and then Kings Island, and then Cedar Point, and then home. So that was the big arc. But basically, we had our hotel reservations, just relatively cheap hotels, since we weren't going to be in the room much at all. And so we laid it all out. We had it printed out and put it on the dashboard, and that was it.
Place to sleep and shower, and then you're on.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Because of the theme of this, how would you kind of say, like your relationship and your daughter, like, did you guys just start to want to, kill each other, or did you have a real big bond over just, the next step?
We did. I think, I would say a couple things to the dads out there. The first is just enjoying the time, not pressing, is wonderful. I think the second thing is you spend a lot of time in the car, and if you're just silent, your kids will just start talking and resist the urge to talk a lot. Just listen, and it's wonderful. I would also say that just sharing that with my daughter was really fun. This is a big point of passion for her, and just watching her light up about, riding the beast, and sharing that. I don't know how many times we rode the beast together. It was fantastic, but just all the fun, just seeing her light up and tell me all about the coasters, who the manufacturer was, how they designed it, all this kind of stuff. That was really fun. And so I would say that's the bonding. And a lot of our bonding, strangely, was around the silly pictures with the park mascots. So we have one of my favorite pictures of us with Whittles, the Knott's Berry Farm mascot. And he's like this minor 49er prospector guy. And it's just a cute photo. And it's one of my favorites.
So you took that theme and then you just decided to do crazy pictures with all the mascots at all the parks you stopped at? Oh, yeah, dude, that's awesome. You'll be able to look back at those pictures. To pause on your trip for a second, something that I wanted to point out that I really liked that you said is you were looking at her excitement. You were judging your days based on her. And I think you were mentioning, talking to some of the dads out there, and this goes for any parent. It took me a little while to get good at that. I mean, I think I tried to push my daughter. My daughter is my oldest, and I think I pushed her a little too much because sounds like Ruth pulled you into coasters. I kind of forced coasters on my children. It took me a couple of trips to get really good at reading their body language, understanding when they're exhausted, and those type of things. So I think it's great that you did that. And I was just kind of a note to all the parents out there. You gotta get good at that. And I love that you said you try to get them talking, because I think that's almost the best thing, to hear what their opinions are, what they were things. Because I mean, my son and daughter have pointed out stuff that I never would have noticed had I not listened to them, and things about rides I didn't even see.
That's right.
So that's a really good story. All right, so going back to your trip, I've got a big question for you. So if you're going from Stillwater City to Kings Island, why didn't you stop at Six Flags St. Louis? Because you're just going to drive now.
Oh boy. Well, maybe we should have. It was a long drive to get
that man. I
get it.
Because we go to Stillwater City a lot, and I go to, and I like I said, I just got back from Kings Island, and I'm trying to picture that drive, and that's got to be like 8 or 9 hours.
Easy.
9?
It was
9
probably
hours?
more
Maybe
than that.
10?
Yeah. My son and I had made a stretch very similar to that on our baseball trip, so I knew it was going to hurt. But I'd say this, my kids, my son is in college. My daughter Ruth goes to college this September. She's going to go to the Savannah College of Art and Design, which there's a very big design tie-in, which I'll get to in just a second. So, but I just say to the dads out there, it goes so fast. When my kids were babies, this guy knew he was in the Secret Service for presidential protection. He was a great dad, had 2, just fantastic father. He said, the days are long, but the time is short. And I can't stress enough with my kids now basically out of the house, how fast it goes. Each day may feel long when you're at the sports practice, sweating it as a coach, standing by at the swimming pool, but the time goes fast. So you just, by the end, you just want to slow it down and enjoy the last couple minutes of it. And so I think that's kind of what I think is wonderful about theme parks, is it's a day where you get to escape and you can just enjoy that time. And if you do it right, you don't feel the clock as much. But I would say the thing that was exciting for me was, it's not just that my daughter is into roller coasters. She's our daredevil, and she's not going to get tired because she's tough. But she is all about the sort of engineering and the design. She did a study in one of her classes of the color theory as applied to coasters colors. And, most are hot colors of red or yellow that kind of speed, but not all, but she did a color analysis. And so this goes back to how some theme parks really do a good job of tying in the coasters themselves and the theming. And of course, some parks, they're more of a collection of sort of mega coasters, but they're not necessarily tied together. But other parks do it really, really well.
That's interesting. I'm trying to, there's some great examples, right? So you said Kings Island. So let's compare Kings Island to Cedar Point, because those have to be two big parks that she had to be really excited to do with you. So why don't you give us a little more, maybe some more deep dive into like how you first walked into Kings Island with her for the first time? Because that had to be huge for you, right?
Oh, it was amazing because, it was the park I went to growing up as a little boy, being scared to get on some of them. And they had their big anniversary that year. And so they had a road show and it was all nostalgia, really. And I'm 53, so I'm a child of the 70s and 80s. So I remember, the Brady Bunch episode that was shot at the park. And I remember, when they rolled out the Beast. And so it was a real sort of nostalgic sort of past, present, and future experience. I also lived outside of Detroit for 4 years as a boy and would go to Cedar Point. And so experienced that all over again as well. And I'm a proud Ohio native. And so it's fun to extol the virtues of my original home state. But there are very different parks, as you know. One is in the southwest of Ohio, and one's on the water, basically west of Cleveland. And they're very different in terms of their theming and layout and everything else. But we basically tried to do a ranking, a rough ranking, and we decided that Kings Island was the best park we visited because there were no demerits. It had great rides. It had great diversity of rides. It had great theming. It had great customer service, and it was almost freakishly clean. And there was nothing wrong with it. So there was no demerits. But after that, we felt like the tie was sort of between Silver Dollar City and Knott's Berry Farm, just because we loved the theming and we loved just the vibe of it. And it was unique to that place. It wasn't generic. It was very unique. And so that was those are kind of the 1, 2, 3s of that. But we of course loved Cedar Point. I mean, it has like a huge, and I'm also a sucker for the sort of dual racing coasters, where you racing the other coaster.
That's one of the better racing ones, right? So yes. You had the racer at Kings Island, and yes. You have the Gemini at Cedar Point. So those racing ones are always good. So me and my kids, we do you get on one train, I get on the other train, and then we try to like high five each other and taunt each other. So did you guys do that?
It was funny because the racer, when we did the racer, we bought different racer hats. And so we did race each other. I think I still have my red racer hat. I think she's
blue, huh?
Yeah. Okay. That was fun. And the racer is a very old coaster and very historic, but it's a rougher ride.
It's not anymore. So Gravity Group retracked quite a bit of the racer over the off season. So this year, quite a bit of those rough spots have been taken out, and it is, I think, for a wood coaster, is one of the smoother ones. They did the Beast also, so you'd be surprised if you went back how different it is for it being the exact same layout. They took out the rough spots. It still feels like a wood coaster. I'm not
okay. We actually did. Oh, it was in Disneyland. It was the Alpine themed one.
Yeah, one of the original steel roller coasters.
Yes, and it ends. They almost look like sleds, and it was very cool because of the history. Obviously, that was a fun one. It was not what I expected, but it was really fun.
Yeah, it's one of the Ace Landmark coasters.
All
right. So you may not remember this, so I may be putting on you the spot, but Kings Island has 2 B&M coasters. One of them is Orion, the new one, the big, tall, fast one. And then the one is so I'm just picturing your daughter. So same manufacturer, but they are so different from a ride perspective. So I'm just picturing you and her talking at how similar they are, but yet completely different they are. Because that's one park that has two of, pretty much, you can't really say the same ride, but they're very similar in nature and same manufacturer. So I think that's one of the unique things also about Kings Island, when you were talking about how that there's no two things that are the same, that they are so distinctly different. So did she mention that at all?
Well, actually, I would say that I believe it was Diamondback.
Yep, that's the other one.
That was her favorite. She loved.
Diamondback is a solid ride, and you just can't help but smile when you hit that the very end where you do the splashdown and shoots water up. It's a great one. So
I think she's got a Diamondback t-shirt somewhere at home. Of course, we have a lot of swag from the trip, a lot of sort of random theme park swag. So,
to remind you about the trip.
Oh yeah. And by the way, since it's not too far, you said you were St. Louis, right?
Yeah. Yep. Six Flags St. Louis. Yeah. I'm in the middle of
we went to Worlds of Fun, Kansas
City.
And I have to do some shout outs to that. That was a fun park. And what was neat about them was, speaking of swag, was when we were there, they had and this is the wonderful thing about doing these theme park tours, is there's sort of serendipity here. So they had all these sort of parades going on, and one of them was Mardi Gras themed, and our family is a big Mardi Gras family, but they had literally a Mardi Gras like parade theme the night we were there, and so we got a lot of beads and all this Mardi Gras swag. So it's just too much fun. But Worlds of Fun was a very hot day, but but we had a good time at that park too. We had a really good time.
That is our Cedar Fair home park, you want to call it that. But my wife has family that live just really close to Kings Island. So although that's our home park for Cedar Fair, we do get over to Kings Island more just because of the family aspect. So going back to family, so your wife is just totally cool if you take in your daughter, 16, just across the country, huh?
Oh yeah. Well, she enjoys coasters, but sometimes it will sort of disrupt that inner ear. So maybe not too many of them. And so I think it was good that I was going. I'm like a huge coaster enthusiast by any stretch, not nearly as much as your listeners, but it was fun because as our trip progressed, I was riding more and more, of the coasters and really getting into it and enjoying it. We would give my wife updates as we would go, and usually random pictures of fair food and things like this. But it was great. It was a wonderful, wonderful trip.
If somebody's thinking about doing something like this, do you have any pro tips now that you've done it on, let's say, for example, clearly you would buy the season pass that would get you into multiple parks, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
Of course, that's maybe a really good tip, of course, that maybe most people wouldn't know about. But what about anything else? Like, you try to stop by, the grocery store and fill a cooler. So you're not just eating, if you're eating at the parks, then, you want some healthy stuff in between, or any other tip like that?
Sure. So in no particular order, I have a number of them. The first is obviously, as you mentioned, but if you're going to do it, you should buy the sort of ultra platinum annual pass extravaganza version of whatever they have. And Cedar Fair is the big dog. So you're likely to hit a number of those. Plan well in advance. Assume it'll take 2 weeks if you're driving across the country. Really put it into a schedule. I have it into a big grid that had how many days, how many hours driving, how many miles, where we're going to stay at night, and then the park and everything else. Kind of map it out a little bit in advance. Pack up the car with plenty of water and cleaning supplies, which I'll get to in a second, and good food that's healthy, because you don't want to just eat, funnel cake for 2 weeks. Maybe
you were the one sending your wife pictures of your fair food, so
you're not going to feel so good if you're doing that each day. And that gets to one point I mentioned, which is the cleaning supplies. Basically, your car becomes your ecosystem on one of these road trips. So you kind of every day want to spend maybe 5 minutes just cleaning it up. And so having a little box of the cleaning stuff to make sure your car is nice and pristine as you're driving, it helps make it feel a little bit better, because you start to get sort of theme park tchotchke buildup in the back. And, you can, if you're not careful, you can have a lot of like fast food wrappers and things lying about.
Yes, I understand.
You want to clean that up. And I guess the last thing I'd say is leave room for serendipity. We have a lot of pictures of us buying, America's largest fake fork, or like,
the largest thermometer in the world.
Actually, we do have a picture of us, largest thermometer.
I was gonna say, if you went to the Venture Dome, you're not too far from there, right?
That's right. We actually had some good. I think that was Needles. Maybe we had some really good food there. So leave room for serendipity. Like in the middle of nowhere, California, when we were driving to Vegas, there was this roadside fruit stand that we had bought these amazing sort of fruit and fruit drinks, and that was fantastic. We stopped at this old timey type saloon outside of Las Vegas where they have shot a lot of famous movies and also located some video games around. It was just like, we stopped at amazing places. In Utah, we saw a place called Silver Reef, which is this really cool sort of abandoned sort of, old West ghost town, and all kinds of stuff like that. So being ready, leaving enough time to just, if you see something silly or fun or what have you, just stop and take that picture. That's one of the great things about the road trip. Now I'm going to share one last suggestion, which drove my daughter nuts. So this
is going to be good.
I do research for a job. I'm a management consultant, and I do market research and research for companies. So I'm used to talking to people and asking questions. And I love doing that. And I talk to everybody and ask them about like the local environment, what's going on. My daughter is an introvert. And so being with her dad while her dad is constantly, chatting with locals about everything, I think could be a little exhausting, maybe educational, but also a little exhausting. And so, I think, but you do learn a lot when you drive across America and talk to Americans. You do kind of fall in love with the country all over again. We certainly did.
That's true. Even when you're standing in line for, your favorite coaster, it's amazing what perspectives you can pull out of the locals. Because normally, I would say a lot of times when you go to these parks, a lot of the people just go to that park and they're not crazy like us, right? Going to different stuff. So it's always fun to also hear, some of the local things, just staying in line.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we had this fun experience. We showed up early at Knott's Berry Farm, and we're standing in line waiting for the park to open so Ruth could hit as many coasters early as possible. That's a great, by the way, something that I'm sure all your members know, right? If you get there early, it's not the heat of the day and you can hit all the big ones fast. But they do the national anthem in the morning, Knott's Berry Farm, before the park opens. And then when it ends, they open the gates. And we just found it to be charming. I didn't expect that, but it was really enjoyable. And so we just enjoyed, hands on hearts, just standing there and then entering the park. That was a wonderful experience.
I really like you kind of walking us through this and stuff. And just some other things to think about. It's not just your kids too. Like if your parents like something, Disney, Universal, whatever, just make a point of trying to do those trips with them. Because not only do your kids get older and you lose the time, it's the exact same for your parents. And I think, I know I am super happy that I still get to do those things with my dad. I think that it's not just your dad, it's your uncle, your friend. I mean, like, just make sure you reach out and have that fellowship, and you can leave everything behind. You don't think about anything but the theme park. And it's an interesting, it's hard to explain, but it's just like one of those things. It's it's cool to bond
It is.
over
It's a
a central
wonderful
thing. Without all the hustle and bustle about everything and social media and all the negative stuff in the world.
Well, it is interesting too, because basically if you do multi-generations at a park, not everybody's going to want to ride X such run, but you could kind of do it where sort of different family members, and you see a lot of multi-generational, matching t-shirts going to theme parks. That's a thing in America, where it's like a family reunion kind of at a theme park. We saw a lot of that, but different family members can just hang out at a nice, one of the restaurants or food venues, or listen to some singing or, music. Like at Silver Dollar City, there's live music all over the place, and then meet up and then ride other rides that everybody finds enjoyable. Right. And so I just think about Disneyland, which we totally enjoyed. And we loved that it was a more compact park than Disney World. And we were able to basically do everything there in one day. But Disneyland's a great example of that, because there are dark rides, there are easier themed rides that every family member could enjoy without feeling, any kind of pressure or scared or anything like that. So you're right. It's a really neat, as long as you take it easy, it can be a wonderful sort of multi-generational experience, I think.
Yeah, I think those are good points. Just some other ideas to throw out there. Sometimes I will go to the park for early park, and I'll go for a couple hours and do exactly what your daughter did, get the big stuff out of the way, and then go back to the hotel and pick up my dad, or pick up, or my wife's with us, maybe me and one of the kids will go for early.
That's a great idea.
And then come back. And so you just got to find those things. And I think you're really talking about the variety and the range of topics. And as long as you keep thinking about the individual people, what they're going to like or what their number one is, and you make sure you work that into a loose schedule, everybody's going to leave happy. And like you said, you just meet up at some relaxing point. So Silver City is a great example of that. So I'm glad you brought that up. So do you have any other nuggets I know that we loosely are calling this a Father's Day episode, but really any other nuggets for families to think about bonding with their kids?
Yeah. I would say there is something magical about riding coasters at dusk. I can see it in my mind's eye. We rode the Beast at dusk in Cincinnati, and, the sun's going down. You have that amazing sort of blue, orange, yellow kind of sky. And it was a wonderful moment, but that was true in almost every park we were at. We had great weather, and that the sunset dusk rides are great. It makes you wonder if maybe you take a little break in the middle of the day and then you back at night and enjoy that and have that time. So I think that's a fun one. I would say the other thing that was really fun and a surprise was at Silver Dollar City, just how much of it is forest, so instead of, I think most of us are used to being on coasters and seeing the park and maybe seeing the outskirts of a city when you're up high or something like that. At Silver Dollar City, most of the time you're just seeing trees and the hills, the Ozarks. And it's a wonderful sort of oxygen rich environment there. But no, I think, bigger picture, I think slow down, don't try to do too much, and just let the time flow and enjoy. So for example, and I'll close with this one, when we were at Knott's Berry Farm, we kind of met up and took a little break on the coasters, and then kind of wandered around the sort of Old West village that they have there. And we really enjoyed it. We went into they have a sort of an old timey saloon with the swinging doors. We could just get root beer, and we did that. It was silly, but it was really a fun sort of mildly educational, but mostly fun, just sort of like quirky little experience that we had. And now, so leaving that time for serendipity and just sharing and just discussion, I think is gold. It's gold.
That's a great tip. Well, hopefully we gave you some ideas, some things to think about. And I think we would both put down a challenge to you listeners out there. to figure out a family event that you can do something. It doesn't have to be all the way across the U.S. You don't have to travel all the way across the U.S. It could be just to a local water park or something. And then and just watch your kids and ask them a lot of questions, and you'll be amazed. And if you try to live it through their eyes, it's almost like I had a second level of excitement the first time I get to take my kids to a park. And it's almost like I'm reliving it through them. So sounds like that's how you were when you walked into Kings Island and you saw that, that the water down the middle, tower in front of you, and you just kind of looked at her and say, we could ride anything right now. What do you want to ride? All right. Well, thanks for tuning in again. Thanks again for joining us on the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you to Robert Moran and John Davidson for that conversation, and to all the coaster dads, stepdads, uncles, and people who are like a father to someone. Happy Father's Day. To my dad, thanks for taking me on the bumper cars and making me ride the free fall for the first time at Rocky Point. I'll never forget it. And listeners, don't you forget, we're headed to CoasterCon in Northern California. Make sure you're following Ace on all the socials to see all the coverage. We hope you'll subscribe to our podcast for our coverage and give us 5 stars if you can, rate and review. And if you have any suggestions or podcast episode pitches for us, please reach out to podcast@aceonline.org. Thanks for listening. We hope you get to ride a coaster today.
Ride With Us is produced by the American Coaster Enthusiasts, a registered 501c3 organization. Visit ridewithace.com for additional information, and we will see you at the parks.